course, we should ban libel and personal threats and calls for insurrection. That's a no-brainer because they're already illegal. Just as it would be illegal in an actual town square to whip out...
Bill Maher just said out loud what most sane liberals have been too afraid to admit: the left's obsession with moral purity has turned truth itself into propaganda. And he said it live on air. For decades, Maher was one of the loudest liberal voices in America, a defender of free speech, a skeptic of religion, and a comedian who mocked both sides with equal passion. But lately, his fire isn't aimed at conservatives anymore, it's aimed at his own tribe. That's what makes this moment so fascinating. Maher isn't ranting out of bitterness, he's watching the movement he helped build morph into something he barely recognizes. As he puts it, when your politics start to look like religion, you're not progressive, you're dogmatic. That's the heart of it. The modern left, in Maher's view, isn't defending truth anymore, it's defending its team. And that shift, from truth to tribe, is exactly what he's calling out. He's not saying lies or threats should be tolerated. Obviously not. He's saying somewhere along the way, truth stopped meaning facts and started meaning narrative. Because let's be real, it's easy to defend truth when it flatters your side. But what happens when the facts cut the other way? That's where Maher draws the line. You can't claim to stand for honesty if you only defend it when it's convenient. Either you believe in truth across the board, or you're just doing PR for your team. That's not courage. That's branding.
Completely believe any of it. Not right away, not until I check it out. And when I ask, is it true? Usually the answer turns out to be, well, sort of. Or yes, but, yeah. See, we've all become very adept at saying things that are technically true but lack context, or that leave out half the story. So if we're going to ban untruth, does that include the half-truth, the quarter-truth? And wait, don't the wokest people in the world believe that what really matters is your truth?
Maher's not against fighting misinformation. He's against redefining it every time the narrative changes. Because when misinformation becomes anything that challenges us, we're not protecting people, we're controlling them. We've all seen it happen. A headline drops, outrage explodes, and by the time the facts catch up, the story's already gone viral. Nobody cares anymore. Context disappears. Nuance dies. And anyone who dares to question the official version gets labeled a conspiracy theorist, or worse.
Of course, we should ban libel and personal threats and calls for insurrection. That's a no-brainer because they're already illegal. Just as it would be illegal in an actual town square to whip out...
Maher's point is simple. That's not how a free society works. Free speech means people can be wrong, even wildly wrong. That's how truth gets tested, refined, and proven. Not through censorship, but through debate. Because when you silence wrong ideas, you don't erase them, you just bury them underground, where they grow in the dark.
Should it be in the digital town square? And so should bots and deep fakes be banned and anything else that aren't really the people who say they are. But that's an entirely different thing than actual people expressing an opinion as repugnant or offensive or as misguided as some opinions may be. This is still America. Where people... where people have the right to express what they think, including to be wrong, to lie, and yes, the right to be an... And if you think you know everything and no one else could possibly have some other truth, you should be glad for that protection, because you're an...
One of Maher's sharpest examples comes from the pandemic. He points out how trust the science slowly turned into obey the narrative. He referenced a poll showing 41% of Democrats thought more than half of unvaccinated people ended up hospitalized with COVID. The real number? Under 1%. That's not a rounding error, that's a total collapse in perception.
71% of Democrats last year believed the hospitalization rate if you got COVID unvaccinated was over 50%, but it was actually less than 1%. Somebody's misinformation got to those people. Sometimes misinformation is just history's first draft. I see a lot of things on social media and also on old fucks media.
And Maher's point wasn't anti-science. It was anti-spin. When people start bending data to fuel fear or shame, truth stops being truth. You can't rebuild trust once people realize they've been emotionally manipulated for their own good. Then there's cancel culture, Maher's favorite punching bag. He once joked that modern journalism runs like an unlicensed daycare center. And he wasn't wrong. He brought up that Washington Post fiasco where reporter Dave Weigel got suspended for retweeting a dumb, harmless joke, "Every girl is bi." You just have to figure out if it's polar or sexual. Light-hearted. Silly. Not malicious. But another reporter launched a full crusade. Suddenly, it wasn't about the joke, it was about punishment. Weigel was suspended, colleagues attacked each other publicly, and the newsroom imploded.
That more effectively captures what's wrong with today's journalism than the sad saga of what happened last week at the Washington Post. They need to keep it to themselves because it would be too depressing. If you missed it, the Washington Post recently got embroiled in a self-inflicted storm when one of their best reporters, David Weigel, retweeted this joke. "Every girl is bi. You just have to figure out if it's polar or sexual." Proving it is a joke. Thank you. The comedian who actually wrote the tweet called it a banal throwaway joke, which is exactly what it is. Throwaway, as in if you don't like it, throw it away. For eons, both sexes have made jokes about how the other is crazy, and no one but the perpetually offended thinks it means anything more than that the sexes get frustrated over how differently we each see the world. And yes, we relieve some of that frustration with humor. And
Maher's takeaway: this isn't moral progress, it's emotional regression. Cancel culture has turned accountability into annihilation. You can apologize, delete the post, do everything right, and it still won't matter because the outrage machine doesn't want growth. It wants casualties. Once you're labeled problematic, redemption isn't allowed. And anyone who defends you, they're next. That's not justice. That's social control dressed up as virtue.
Weigel pulled down his retweet and wrote, "I apologize and did not mean to cause any harm," and that was the end of that. I'm joking, of course. The unlicensed daycare center that is today's newsroom went. You see, the Post has another writer named Felicia Sonmez, and she's a lot. For example, she tweeted about Kobe Bryant's 2003 rape trial hours after his helicopter crash. And despite the fact that she says Dave Weigel is a good friend, she resurrected the tweet he had taken down with a screenshot and demanded to know what the Post was going to do about this unacceptable evil that must not be allowed to stand. Sarcastically writing, "Fantastic to work at a news outlet where tweets like this are allowed." Yes, can you imagine a world that allows jokes you...
Being a comedian, Maher sees the fallout firsthand. Comedy used to be the pressure valve of society, he says, the one place where everything could be joked about, because humor meant freedom. Now comics are terrified. They self-censor before the audience ever hears the joke. Maher's blunt: if George Carlin or Richard Pryor were alive today, they'd be trending for all the wrong reasons before their first special even dropped. When everything's offensive, nothing's funny. And when nothing's funny, culture goes sterile. Humor dies, and with it, our ability to process uncomfortable truths.
Ship at the Post folded like a Miami condo, and suspended Weigel without pay for a month and denounced the offending retweet as a gross violation of their values. Free speech apparently not being one of them. Then a third Post reporter offered up the idea, of course on Twitter, because why do anything privately, that, hey, maybe everyone was overreacting and we should all just calm down. And then it was really on. Felicia demanded that the Post discipline him and tweeted about that. I assume she's tweeting about this right now.
At one point, Maher referenced a New York Times op-ed asking, "Why are we still governed by baby boomers?" His answer, because younger generations, for all their talk of tolerance, have grown allergic to discomfort. He compared boomers to grandmothers who'd rather be watching Judge Judy, but have to raise the kids again because their children can't handle real life. Brutal? Yes. But it hit a nerve.
Times just ran an op-ed entitled, "Why are we still governed by baby boomers?" This is why. Because too many millennials are overly sensitive, overly fragile, and have no sense of priorities. You know, I'm sure many boomers would love to retire, but they can't. They're like the grandmother who'd much rather be watching Judge Judy, but has to raise her grandkids because her own kids are too to manage it.
We've built a culture that confuses disagreement with danger. Hearing an opinion you don't like isn't harm, it's growth. Free speech isn't supposed to feel safe. It's supposed to be messy, unpredictable, sometimes infuriating. That's how progress happens, through argument, not avoidance. After tearing into all of this, Maher always circles back to one point: truth doesn't belong to a political party. You can be liberal, conservative, moderate, doesn't matter. The moment you start silencing people because they make you uncomfortable, you're not protecting truth anymore. You're protecting your comfort zone. And comfort zones are where societies stop thinking. Maher isn't defending hate or ignorance, he's defending the right to think out loud, something that's becoming rare in a world obsessed with being correct. He reminds people, freedom of speech isn't a reward. It's a responsibility. Because when you hand the government, tech companies, or mobs the power to decide who gets to speak, you're giving away the foundation of democracy itself. So maybe Maher isn't the problem. Maybe he's the alarm clock the left keeps trying to hit snooze on, forcing uncomfortable questions back into the spotlight. And that's exactly what a healthy culture needs.
Fire of 1,000 burning bras. Sending a gazillion tweets calling for more to be done against Weigel, mocking her bosses, attacking colleagues, and letting the world know how much the Washington Post sucked. And this endless bickering and infighting continued online in public view until the bell rang and they all went to 7th period. Now, note that I haven't yet told you what age Felicia Sonmez and her quarreling co-workers are. Why? Because I didn't have to. Because you can't imagine someone my age acting like this in an...
Because a country that's afraid of words isn't strong, it's fragile. A democracy that silences dissent isn't enlightened, it's scared. And fear is a terrible substitute for wisdom. At the end of the day, Maher's not trying to burn the house down. He's trying to remind people what made it worth living in to begin with: debate, disagreement, and the freedom to say "I think you're wrong" without losing your job, your friends, or your platform. If you've made it this far, you're clearly one of the few people left who still values real discussion, not just slogans. So hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't, and drop your take in the comments. Do you think Maher's right, that the left has lost its grip on truth, or is he just out of touch with the modern world? Let's actually talk about it the way free societies are supposed to. Because if we lose the right to question, we lose the ability to think. And once thinking dies, truth isn't far behind.